Welcome to Victor Narrates Reddit. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's begin. My unfaithful wife got pregnant by her lover. She terminated her pregnancy at a clandestine clinic, and a month after our divorce, she passed away. I'm in a crazy situation. Never in a million years did I think I would find myself in such a shameful predicament. It's not even my fault. I did everything a man is supposed to do for a family. I simply chose the wrong person. That is the only aspect for which I can blame myself. But she hid the kind of person she truly is very well. Well, I don't want to blame myself for not realizing, but I still do. This is about my wife, Clara. I am 35, and she is 33. We have been married for 7 years. I considered us to be happily married. Obviously not anymore. But I believed it while I was living in the blissful ignorance of not knowing what kind of person she was. I thought she felt the same way. Maybe she did for most of the time too, but something changed at some point. We have a son together. If it weren't for the fact that the child looks so much like me, I would have already started having the worst doubts. Everyone says it. I know that doesn't make it a fact, and that I will still have to do a DNA test on him later, but right now, I don't even want to deal with the anxiety and potential heartache that would cause. For now, I will simply assume the child is mine because it makes my life simpler at this moment. The big problem now is that Clara is pregnant. She hasn't told me. We had agreed that we only wanted to have one child. So on that front, I could think she doesn't want to tell me she's pregnant for that reason. But I don't think that's it. It's not her fault if she gets pregnant. So even if we didn't plan for a second child and it just happened, the logical thing would be for her to at least tell me so we could make a decision together. I know perfectly well why she hasn't told me. It's because it's highly unlikely that this child is mine. It sounds like a wild accusation after being married for so long, but I know the chances of that baby being mine are very low. I understand you can't completely predict the workings of a human body, so I know there's a possibility the baby is actually mine, but I'm not going to consider that 1% probability before considering the other 99%. We don't sleep together much anymore. Not by my choice at all, under any circumstances. Things just changed after we had our son. Us being intimate is practically a special event for me at this point. It probably happens once a month, which is crazy because we used to be all over each other like rabbits. However, there's nothing I can do about it. I resigned myself to my fate a while ago. Many men go through the same nonsense. It's because we don't sleep together that often that I doubt the child is mine. The last time we had sex, her period literally started 2 days later. Again, I know the body is complex, but in most cases, she was so far from her next fertile window that I shouldn't have been able to get her pregnant. She has a normal cycle. It's not hard to predict when she's ovulating. That would have been enough to know it was unlikely to be my child. But that wasn't the only criterion I used to get to that point. There's also the fact of how I found out she is pregnant. It's not showing yet, but I noticed some changes in her mood. At first, I thought they were related to her period. She must have noticed these mood swings or other symptoms in her body as well. That's why she bought a pregnancy test and took it. The test came back positive, showing she was pregnant. When I put the pieces together, it just didn't make sense that she wouldn't tell me. If she had to make a difficult decision about whether to have the baby or not, she knows I would have stood by her side. Why did I have to dig a pregnancy test out of the trash? She tried to hide it at the bottom, but I saw it sticking out from under other garbage in there. Needless to say, I got curious and rummaged through the trash enough to see what it was. At that moment, I had to take it out. I took a picture of it and saved it in a safe place, so she can never deny it existed or say, I took the picture from the internet. The next question that came to my mind was the obvious one. If she wasn't pregnant by me, who was she pregnant by? That question was driving me crazy. I wanted to think of some way the baby could be mine, but the math just didn't add up. I know I'm not a doctor or a biology expert, but I know enough about how reproduction works to know it was highly unlikely that child was mine, especially if she hadn't told me anything. I had to find the answers for myself, which meant going through her phone. She would never give me the answer if she had already gone this far to hide the situation from me. Asking her directly wasn't going to get me any results. I had to find out on my own, so I decided to resort to the classic method of snooping. It wasn't going to be difficult. She wasn't careful with her phone because I hardly ever touched it. I was able to grab it while she was asleep as she left it on her wireless charger. She's a heavy sleeper and doesn't wake up a single time on an average night. I assumed this would be one of those normal nights, so I didn't panic when I took the phone and started looking through the messages. The problem was that I didn't know where to start, so I just had to keep scrolling and reading. I read her messages with many people, but I finally found the answer. There's a guy she works with named Alex. The reason I don't like him, even though I know very little about him, is that one day she cheerfully told me that people at the office called him her work husband. I hate that term, and I don't understand why women think it's the kind of thing you should tell your real partner. I am her real husband, and I have a normal amount of jealousy. It makes no sense that she thought that was something I would want to know. Of course not. That just told me there was too much closeness between the two of them in a place where she is completely out of my sight. I didn't think of it first. I don't know why I didn't. It took me going through the list of conversations in her messaging app to realize that everything fit and that it was him. I felt foolish for not realizing it initially. It could have been someone I didn't know, but of all the people I did know, he was the one who made the most sense of the whole group. Reading the messages, the conclusion I came to was that the two of them had never stopped being inappropriate with each other. Some of their older messages corroborated the work husband/wife angle, because she started the conversation in their text by joking about how people had decided that's what they should be, so they couldn't help it. He laughed it off, and they basically launched into flirting with each other. There was no shame. There didn't seem to be any remorse either. After the first day, they went right back to the same thing. To say I was upset is an understatement. All those months she spent talking to him as if he were her boyfriend, while I was there thinking I had a loving wife. How all of that happened behind my back without me knowing left me feeling like a fool. I felt like the biggest fool in the world. As much as I hated what I was reading and knew this wasn't going to end well, a morbid curiosity took over me. I had to keep reading to discover the true extent of what was happening with Clara. The story is exactly as you would imagine. It's about two people who worked very closely and being the trash that they didn't give a damn about their personal relationships because that guy has a girlfriend. They decided to play the role of work husband and wife, telling themselves and their partners that it was no big deal, but basically crossing several lines every time they were safely within the confines of their workplace. It was absolutely infuriating to read what was happening in their private conversations. They went from being flirty and giving each other too many compliments to becoming outright sexual and lustful. And then, as expected, there came a point where it was very clear that they had both crossed the big line. They were acting like school children in the messages. They talked about how much pent-up tension there had been and how well it had all turned out. They weren't explicit in that regard, but with two brain cells to rub together, it was more than clear what they were talking about. Once I finished reading everything, I just sat there in a kind of stunned silence. I looked at her where she was sleeping, and I don't know if what I felt was hatred, but it was a strongly negative feeling. Do you understand what it feels like to realize you've been played for a fool? To think that everything was normal, loving and kissing your wife, while all that time she was taking you for a fool. That you were sharing her with someone else. That infuriates me. I don't consider myself a violent man, but this really made me lose my temper. I wanted to break something or hurt someone. Alex was the first person I wanted as a victim, but it took me a few hours of reflection to realize that I couldn't ruin my life just because a woman had betrayed me. That seemed very weak to me. I wasn't going to let that happen, so I'm just putting together my escape plan. We have a son, and I need to protect that child's interests. I refuse to have strange men brought around my son. I don't think I can trust her to make the right decisions in the future as a single mother, since right now she's making the senseless decision to cheat on me just for a little bit of pleasure. I'm going to make this work no matter what. I have no choice but to sit back, plan my exit route, and leave. That's what I'm working on. The pregnancy test isn't what convinced me something was wrong. The months of flirting, the affair, and the fact that she apparently hid the pregnancy from me are the real issues here. Even if the baby somehow turned out to be mine, she was still carrying on a relationship behind my back with a coworker while I thought our marriage was fine. And that whole work husband thing is funny until it's not. Too many people treat it like a harmless office joke and then act surprised when the emotional boundaries disappear and it turns into a real relationship. Update 1, there's going to be a lot more to cover in this update, and I'll do my best to make sure I cover it all without going on for too long. The first thing to mention is that I've already met with a divorce lawyer. We've talked. He's been paid. The papers have been served, and the divorce process has begun. That's where we are now. Now for the details. I confronted Clara. I had to. I wasn't going to sit around letting the pain consume me forever. She didn't see it coming because she really thought she had everything under control. I approached her right after she had put our son to bed. I didn't waste any time. I told her I knew about Alex. She let out a choked gasp. Then she tried to cover it up and claimed she didn't know what I was talking about. I told her I knew she was pregnant. I told her I knew it was Alex's. I didn't know for an absolute fact, but best case scenario at that point, she had only cheated on me with one person, and it was him. There could have been several other people I didn't know about, but I was just hoping the one I knew was the right guy, because it's a different kind of rage to know your wife was basically sleeping around. She tried to deny it again very weakly, but I just shook my head. I told her not to lie to me, because I was already angry and very close to losing my temper. I'm normally a calm guy, so I knew that scared her. She looked at me like a puppy, as if that would soften me up for her. I gave her one last chance to confess what she did, and she took it. She told me that I already knew who Alex was beyond my confrontation. She claimed the work husband thing hadn't started with her. Other people at the workplace had been the ones to label her and him that way, and they didn't have the power to stop people from doing that. They were already friends before, but the fact that people saw them as a good couple seemed to make them lean into it even more. She said she knew it was wrong, but it was much easier said than done for her when it came to pulling away from it. She maintained they were friends before, and that's why she didn't want them to drift apart, especially not based on things other people at work were saying and not them. I asked her why friends would flirt so intensely with each other. She had nothing to say to that. I just shook my head because even in her attempt to tell the truth, she was still lying. At that moment, I knew there was nothing that could save us. I could never trust her again for a second. I simply told her to stop her explanation. Then I told her we were getting a divorce because of her actions. I no longer believed she was telling me the truth. She tried to interrupt, but I told her to be quiet. I asked her what happened to the pregnancy she had. She said nothing, and I just shook my head. That explained why she had hidden the evidence. Her goal wasn't to pass it off as mine. She just wanted to get rid of all the evidence, but she failed in her attempt. It seemed that confronting her with her misdeed made her angry, because when she was backed into a corner, she suddenly went crazy. She told me the only reason she had cheated on me was that I had been neglecting her at home. If I hadn't done that, she wouldn't have felt the need to seek comfort from someone else. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I never neglected her. If there was ever anything I did that could be classified as such, it would have been during times when I had a ridiculous amount of work to handle. I felt the need to dig into it, but in the end, I recognized she was just a woman refusing to take responsibility. I told her it would be fine and let her know the papers would be coming to her soon. She kept rambling on and trying to paint me as the villain, but I left the room because otherwise I was going to end up acting on impulse. As for Alex, I wanted nothing to do with him. I was able to find his Instagram in Clara's follower list and then managed to find his girlfriend. I sent her all the screenshots of the messages between her man and Clara and then said nothing more. I saw the notification that she read the message, but she never replied, even to this day. That's fine by me. I just know I did what I had to do, regardless of whether she decides to break up with him or not. As for me, the only thing left was to focus on my divorce. I'm going to make sure I do my best in that regard. Update to this will definitely be my last update on matters related to Clara, my ex-wife. We are now divorced, which is something I'm extremely grateful for. I obviously didn't marry or love her in the hope that we would one day separate, but she destroyed the trust one had in her. Not only did she sleep with another man, but she got pregnant by him. That is unforgivable. The divorce process went exactly as I expected it to, thanks to the top-tier lawyer I spent money on. I knew he was worth every penny because I hired him on a very good recommendation. She got alimony, which my lawyer told me would be a sort of concession. But in return, not only did I get to keep the house, but I also got majority custody of our son with a 70-30 arrangement. I was surprised how he managed to pull that off, But he did it by using her affair, her decision to terminate the pregnancy, and some other unsavory choices she had made as the absolute basis for the case. She was upset, obviously, but that only made me happier. I was glad she didn't get a good exit from our marriage. She didn't deserve it. Not someone who had cheated on me. I'm especially happy that I got to keep our son most of the time, because she was busy trying to have kids with other people. She knows she has that option, so she can continue to explore it if she wants. The last thing I did was expose her. Throughout the divorce, she maintained the stance that I had neglected her, which was an absolute falsehood. She knew it, but she kept painting me as some kind of overly absent husband, saying she had to fulfill her human need for love and affection outside the home. That was bullshit. I had to make sure everyone knew it. I know this sounds conceited, but all her friends and family like me. I'm a good guy, I know that. I've never behaved badly towards them, and they can attest to that. When I sent a message to practically everyone letting them know how things had been between us, to say they were shocked would be an understatement. The fact that I also got majority custody made it clear that the court had seen wrongdoing on her part. I came out looking like the model husband who had loved and been hurt, and the system had given me the upper hand. I made sure everyone knew she had been lying when she said I neglected her. That was the part that bothered everyone the most. She always used to talk about the things I did for her with many of those people. So when she changed the narrative to say I neglected her, they knew it was an absolute lie. I didn't ask them to do anything, but I know they did. Her brother told me he had spoken to her. A cousin and a friend said the same thing. Clara herself called me to let me know that at least 7 people had called her to reprimand her, that she was humiliated. She asked me why I thought I hadn't neglected her. I told her I didn't think it, because it simply hadn't happened. She started to cry. She told me she just didn't feel loved enough. I pointed out that she only felt that way in retrospect, because she needed an excuse to justify her horrible behavior. She had never once complained to me about not feeling loved enough, even though I'm one of the few men who would take that kind of thing well. She acknowledged it herself. She told me she was so sorry. She didn't want to ruin things with her actions, but she had, and she knew she didn't have the power to turn back time or make me forgive her. She really wanted to know if I would ever consider us getting back together. I told her no. The easy answer was no. I simply couldn't trust her again. Not after that kind of behavior. There was more crying and then a very quiet, okay. I don't feel any pity for her. There was going to be no salvation for our marriage from the moment I found out she had been sleeping with another man. If she had her affair for a while, ended it, and never gotten pregnant by him, I never would have known. But cheaters always have to take things too far. I probably wouldn't forgive a one-night stand, let alone a full-blown affair that was still ongoing at the time I discovered it. Absolutely not. Now she's left with very little happiness because she has her son for about 1/3 of the year and she no longer has me. All of that is her fault. I wish she didn't have to do this, but she did, so she gets what she deserves. Author's note, /edit, just a small edit. Alex's girlfriend finally got in touch with me. It took her forever, but she told me she was initially angry with me for ruining what was a good life for her. But after a while, she realized it was better to know the truth, no matter how destabilizing it might be. She told me she had broken up with Alex, thanked me, and then told me she was going to block me. That was funny, but yeah, I guess it's all over now. Update 3, this is an update I never thought I would have to write, and I'm still struggling to process how quickly things can change. It has been a month since the divorce was signed and the entire legal process was finalized. I thought the worst was behind us and that we were each going our own way, but fate had a tragic end in store for Clara. A few days ago, I received a call from her brother. His voice was completely broken. He called to give me devastating news. Clara had passed away. According to what he told me, Clara never coped with the loss of her lifestyle or the social pressure, and in her desperation to get rid of any link to the mistake she made, she decided to go to a clandestine clinic to terminate the pregnancy. Unfortunately, they performed a botched procedure on her. The procedure was done poorly from the start, but she kept quiet out of fear and shame, trying to act as if nothing was wrong during these weeks. A month after going to that place, her body couldn't take it anymore. She started having massive and extremely severe internal bleeding at home. Her family found her and rushed her to the hospital. When she was admitted, the doctors did everything humanly possible to stabilize her, but the damage was already irreversible. In addition to the terrible hemorrhage, the botched operation had caused a very advanced, widespread infection that caused her organs to fail. She died in the hospital a few hours later. Finding this out left me in a state of absolute shock. Despite all the pain, betrayal, and rage I felt for what she did to us, I would have never wished such a dark, painful, and lonely end for her. It's a terrible way to pay for bad decisions from which, at the end of the day, no one could save her. Despite the tragedy, my absolute priority has not changed and is now stronger than ever: my son. He has been left without a mother at a very young age, and he needs me to be whole. I have decided to completely close this chapter of my life, leave the past behind without resentment, and focus 100% on moving forward, working hard, and raising my little boy to give him the bright and stable future he deserves.